What up, boxing fans? So this is probably the third time I'm making this video. Seems as if there's been some type of delay with the video and the audio, but I think I got it right this time. So some of this news is a little backed up, but we do got a fight this weekend, or a couple fights this weekend. But before I get to that, I just wanted to really touch on the news that we got a couple days ago that the official numbers for Mayweather Pacquiao are in, and like we expected, it breaks the 2.4 million buys from Oscar and Cotto. Now, Canelo and Floyd made more money because of how much the pay-per-view was, but it didn't sell as much. So the record until this past Monday, or I guess May 2nd, was 2.4 million buys. This fight did 2 million and a bit plus over at 4.4 million buys, which is crazy. It's just crazy, and it's a number I don't think we're going to see broken anytime soon. So as far as the actual event and the money that was made, it's a success. Whether or not you thought the fight was boring or not, or what have you, it's irrelevant because they made their money. And like I expected, it was a fight that attracted the casual fan and even people who aren't sports fans. I mean, I know people directly who don't watch basketball, don't watch baseball, don't watch football, don't watch boxing, anything, but they got brought into this event. And I think that's the thing with boxing, maybe a little similar to the Super Bowl, where the sport itself transcends sports, or at least the event transcends the actual sport. And I think this was the case for this fight. Unfortunately, for the casual fan that was looking for knockouts and a drag-out fight, I don't think any of us really expected that. I think maybe some of us expected a more a little bit more action, considering, you know, Pacquiao, who's really a guy that was supposed to bring the fight. But at the same time, you won't find a lot of overly exciting Mayweather fights. And it's not to diss him, but it's his style of fighting. And it was Pacquiao's job to really get Floyd out of that comfort zone. Didn't happen. So that's pretty much it as far as that's concerned. The 4.4 million buys is huge, which monetarily, Floyd's looking at somewhere along the area of 240 million. Pacquiao about 140, 150 million. Crazy money. Like, Pacquiao's making the money that Floyd likely would have made if this fight just did the 3.2, but it did like an extra million. And, you know, you got to think Floyd got a nice cut of that. So as far as who Floyd fights on from here, man, I had mentioned this on the GYGB boxing podcast every Monday night, 9:30. I think the best scenario for Floyd, and he's holds 3 records of the biggest selling pay-per-views, not in just boxing, but in pay-per-view history. Truthfully, man, I think his next fight should be a free fight on CBS. He's peaked as not only a fighter, but as a seller on pay-per-view. He's not going to make even 1.5 or 1.6 million with anybody available, with the exception of Gennady Golovkin, which, even with that being said, I don't think that would still be a huge sell. But I think for the general public that were screaming bloody murder that this fight wasn't overly exciting, and being that, you know, it was 100 a pop and people bought the Mayweather Pacquiao fight, I think having the fight on CBS as his swan song fight, I think, makes a lot of sense. You know, Floyd has a Showtime contract, but is under the CBS umbrella. I don't see how it can't happen. To me, in my opinion, I think they might be a bit foolish putting his last fight on pay-per-view, considering, again, the outcry of a lot of people who didn't really like the Mayweather Pacquiao fight. So while people will be like, I don't want to watch Floyd and all this, they'll watch it if it's free on CBS. And with the sponsors that can get behind that fight, and, you know, they'll sell it like it's Floyd's last fight. And I don't think he's going to get I could be wrong, but I'm leaning towards Floyd not getting a really tough fight as far as I guess whoever you would consider a tougher fight based on who's available, be it Keith Thurman, Amir Khan, Miguel Cotto rematch, which I think is a dark horse in the sweepstakes for Floyd. But at this point, man, like I think it's just you know, really, if you believe Floyd is going to come back after this 49th fight, I wouldn't be one complaining if he fights somebody that's borderline B-level guy, especially if it's on free TV. So, you know, we're not going to hear anything for like the next couple of months anyway. He's saying he's fighting September 12th, which is a segue into, well, before I get to that, actually, Manny Pacquiao. I'm not going to really jump too much into the whole shoulder situation, but at the same time, we do have to recognize that he is not going to be fighting for the next 9 to 12 months. And, you know, Manny Pacquiao at this point, man, it's for really both guys, this is the end of their careers. How many fights does Pacquiao? I think he has 2 fights left with Top Rank. And I'm hearing names like Lucas Matisse and Terrence Crawford. And those aren't easy fights for Manny Pacquiao. So, I mean, do they just kind of like just use Manny Pacquiao as a stepping stone for some of these other guys, and, you know, with a hefty paycheck attached to it, or does Pacquiao just outright retire? He wants a Floyd rematch, but that ship has sailed, man. I mean, I don't think the demand is there from the public. The only way I think it would happen, in my opinion, is if Manny comes back, fights a Terrence Crawford or Lucas Matisse and annihilates both. But even then, the first fight wasn't close. I mean, I guess if you want to talk about the shoulder injury, but again, that's a whole other story in itself. So as far as Mayweather-Pacquiao is concerned, I think that era is over with. And I think Floyd will have his last fight, so to speak, in September. And we'll have to wait and see what Pacquiao when he comes back from the shoulder injury. Now, to segue into Canelo Alvarez. I wanted to talk about this fight. I talked about it briefly on the GYGB boxing podcast last Monday. And it was an impressive performance from Canelo. And this was what I thought would happen. You know, James Kirkland has been a guy that's always been a rough, rugged guy, but just a very limited boxer. And while Canelo has, even based on this fight, still has some things I would question as far as things he may need to work on stamina-wise, he's sharp, man. You know, Canelo, again, still 24 years old, man. I mean, I think a lot of us, we tend to forget that when we're dealing with Canelo because, you know, he's already gotten a date with Floyd Mayweather. Wasn't successful, but, you know, he's fought the likes of Austin Trout, Erislandy Lara, Fernando Angulo, and Floyd in the span of like a year and a half. So he's at a point now where he is fighting names. And I think how he, you know, when you're given opposition like this is how you're supposed to perform. I would be more worried for Canelo if he didn't take Kirkland out in that manner. So at least for his sake, he made a statement to Miguel Cotto, and you know, obviously that's the fight at the helm right now. Now Miguel Cotto has a date June 6th against Daniel Geale, which by no means is a pushover fight. Daniel Geale's been in there with top guys, especially the top guy at middleweight. I wouldn't even say arguably. I mean, I think he is. Cotto's WBC champion, beat Martinez, but Golovkin to me is the #1 middleweight in the world. And you know, this is a fight which could be a precursor to, or I think is a precursor to, a summit meeting between Cotto and Canelo. But you know, Gil is a legit middleweight. I would say even going into this fight, a healthier and bigger middleweight than what Cotto faced against Martinez. So, I mean, you have to take that into account. Now, be it Cotto gets past Daniel Gil, that's the next fight. Cotto's team and Canelo's team, there's preliminary discussions, and they're still negotiating to set this fight up. And I think one of the big reasons why HBO is televising this fight is in conjunction with there being some type of guarantee or some type of agreement that there is going to be a fight. And for one, I don't think Cotto's afraid to fight Canelo. I mean, I think a lot of it's just business. And I think part of it had to do with Top Rank. Not, I mean, I don't know the whole story, but, you know, Cotto's obviously now signed to Rock Nation. And, you know, Cotto's has had a long relationship with Top Rank, but just very convenient that once the negotiations broke down with Cotto and Canelo, he signs a contract with Rock Nation, which guarantees him in the ballpark of 15 to 16 million guaranteed a fight. So, I mean, again, man, I think it was just business. But when I'm talking about to mention Floyd's comeback date, which is apparently September 12th, Canelo, there was an article that on Boxing Scene that Canelo says that he's not moving away from the September 12th date, and it's like we've been down this road before, and you know he said Floyd, if he, you know, the only way he's gonna move that date if he fights Pacquiao, and guess what happened? He fought Pacquiao and he moved the date anyway. The reason I mentioned the CBS date is, again, if they go about meeting Floyd, if Floyd's last fight is on CBS, Oscar has no choice but to move the date, because HBO or HBO pay-per-view is not going to compete with network television. It's just stupid. And I think it would be stupid to even do it the week after. So, to me, if Cotto gets past Gil, I don't see why this fight can't happen in November or December. They would have a lot of time to promote the fight. They could that fight would be worthy of a tour. New York, Texas, California, Puerto Rico. That's the type of fight that needs a tour, because while for boxing fans it's huge. I mean, it's the second biggest fight in boxing that can be made. For the casual fan and for Oscar's sake, being how he's going to promote it, he's going to promote this fight like, if you want to see a real fight, this is the one you got to tune. I have no doubt they're going to promote that fight that way. And quite honestly, man, I mean, the style matchup will make for a very exciting fight that the casuals will, I think, be enamored by. You know, both guys are still in. Well, I would say Canelo's young. He's still, you know, he's the youth in this scenario, and Cotto's the veteran. You know, the more experienced guy, but the style matchup is going to make for a crazy fight. Obviously, be it Cotto gets past Daniel Gil. But in my opinion, that fight should be made either in November, being Pacquiao's likely not going to come back for the rest of the year. They have that November area, and they have that first week of December, which is, again, another high marquee date. We saw Pacquiao and De La Hoya fight first week of December. We saw, you know, just Floyd fight. I think didn't he fight Ricky Hatton in December? Or could be no, actually he didn't. No, wait, he did. Quote me if I'm wrong. I'm bad with dates, but or don't quote me. But I think at the same time, you know, we have to look at the fact that, you know, Canelo's trying to be the guy, the superstar, before the biggest superstar in boxing leaves. I don't know why Oscar and Canelo are trying to compete with Floyd. Let Floyd do his thing. You know, he's got the upper hand in every department, as we have already seen. So I don't see what the rush is. And Cotto's not going to fight him in September. Now, again, Canelo can say, all right, well, I'm going to fight Joshua Clottey in September, and then I'll fight again in December. You know, because the whole original plan was for Canelo to fight 3 times in 1 year. So maybe that's what they'll do, is have him fight September, then October, November, and then December he fights again. In my opinion, I think he should wait out on that. But again, he is 24 years old, man. I mean, you don't want to really waste your youth, fighting once or twice a year. So we'll have to wait and see what happens after the Gil fight. But in my opinion, if I'm Canelo and I'm Team Oscar or Golden Boy, whatever, that's the next fight. I don't care if it's in November or December. That's the next fight. You don't want to risk anything, and that is the next biggest money fight that they can make. And it's, again, Puerto Rico, Mexico, huge rivalry, the biggest Puerto Rico-Mexico fight in years. I would say bigger than Cotto Margarito when concerning both of those guys. So we'll have to wait and see with what happens with Cotto and Gil. Now, to further segue, as far as middleweights are concerned, the guy that's looking at both of the Canelo and Cotto like a T-bone steak is the guy that's going to be fighting this weekend, and that is Gennady Triple G Golovkin, as he's going to be facing Willie Monroe Jr. Now, I wasn't very familiar with Willie Monroe. I had to go back and watch some of his fights. And again, man, like, I think Willie Monroe presents a different style than what Golovkin has been seeing as a pro. But again, seeing some of these fights with Willie Monroe, he's not at Golovkin's level. And you may give him some looks here and there. You know, he's termed as a slick fighter, but people tend to throw that term around just like how people throw the term all-time great around, or great, or whatever, you know, what have you. I don't think it's a style that Golovkin's never seen. I mean, we got to remember that Golovkin, his amateur career is, you know, something to talk about when you talk about how many amateur fights he had and the different styles that he saw. So I don't think this is really much of a I don't want to say a test, but I think they're just giving him a different look. You know, he's not going to be a come forward type of guy, speaking of Monroe. And, you know, he's going to box, but is he going to be able to outbox Gennady Golovkin for 12 rounds without taking punishment and surviving the punishment? And my answer is no to that. You know, I see that fight stopping in the 5th or 6th round based on what I've already seen from Willie Monroe Jr. And, you know, you know, he may fare well against some of the other top-rated middleweights, but, you know, Golovkin, just kind of like with Floyd in a way, like he's just 2 tiers above everybody else at middleweight, you know, and Floyd with that welterweight. So the thing with Golovkin, though, when I mentioned Cotto and Canelo, he is looking at them as 2 potential big money fights, and I think the fact that, you know, he's now talking about Canelo as well and saying that he'd like to have a Canelo date next May for next Cinco de Mayo, that could be ridiculous fight. But we obviously have to wait and see what happens with a Cotto-Canelo fight, because, you know, if Canelo loses that fight, does Cotto get a fight, or does he jump into a fight with Gennady Golovkin, or does he retire? I'm on the boat thinking that Cotto is never going to fight Golovkin, and I think that's a fight they're looking at like they don't need in their life. So with Canelo, though, he's younger. He looks like he's going to be a strong middleweight. I don't know why they're not like already at least easing him into middleweight. But Golovkin versus Canelo, and even Golovkin versus Cotto are huge fights. But I think Canelo and Golovkin, that fight can be fireworks. And when you think about how the Mexicans are getting behind Golovkin and how the Mexicans are behind Canelo for the most part, that's an interesting situation as far as who the fans are going to be cheering for. But at the end of the day, man, we have to obviously wait and see what happens between really all 3 guys. But I think Golovkin, he's going to make easy work for the most part of Willie Monroe Jr. And I think following that fight, I think the fight that they're going to aim for is Andy Lee, because Andy Lee's another title holder. The IBF title is vacant at this point because of Jermaine Taylor's arrest and that whole situation. So if he beats and fights and beats Andy Lee, you know, Golovkin has fought all the current champions minus the WBC champions. So, you know, the pressure would be on whoever the champion is by the beginning of next year for them to have a summit meeting with Gennady Golovkin. So that's pretty much it. This Saturday, HBO, and we're going to see also Chocalito fight on that card, Roman Martinez. And I mean, if you guys haven't had a chance to watch him fight, I mean, tune in this weekend. So that's pretty much it. As I always say, subscribe, hit the links, and every Monday night, the GYGB crew, including myself, Code Train, Ride or Die, Sleep, Big Mike, everybody, every Monday night talking boxing. And tune in. I'll be putting the link below in the description. So till Saturday night, or actually Sunday, I'll be recapping the Golovkin fight, and and I'll also be talking about Porter versus Adrian Broner versus Sean Porter that was officially announced, as well as Errol Spence and Roberto Garcia on the undercard. And I'm happy to see that because they're starting to give Errol Spence some competition this year, which is what I want to see, and especially with Felix Verdejo, which is another one of the top guys or up-and-coming guys I'm really, really looking forward to seeing. So until then, subscribe, hit the links, and I will be back with you soon.